Hello YouTube! I wanted to build off of my last video talking about what you can use the Riot API for. So this video is specifically going to address Valorant, since this game is a little bit different than the other games that we can use on the Riot API. As a reminder, this is freely available. If you want to learn more about the Riot API, I'd recommend checking out my course. It's right here at the bottom, Riot API Bootcamp on Thinkific. It should help you go from knowing basically nothing to building your own app at the end. So there's my plug there. So why is Valorant different? Well, unlike other Riot games such as TFT, Legends of Runeterra, League of Legends, you cannot use your personal API key. So this means the key you're issued by default, you cannot use it for Valorant-related applications. Specifically, if you want to create an app, you have to apply to Riot. So they basically get the final say on whether or not you can even work with the data. You can see here on the screen the Valorant game policy. This is how Riot actually decides if your app will be approved. It's available on the Riot API portal. Actually, let me jump over and show that right now. If you go here to the Valorant docs page, it'll tell you what the policy is, what you can and cannot do. And these are things you have to consider when you apply to get your app approved. Again, just driving home how this is different than the other Riot Games products. League of Legends. The Riot API was originally designed for this. It has a whole bunch of endpoints and anyone can use it. Legends of Runeterra. It's more like giving you game state and some client interactions, and then Teamfight Tactics is basically like League of Legends. And I wanted to point out that they are very stringent about what they approve. For example, I wanted to examine whether or not patches around agent mobility actually impacted the game duration. My thought being, hey, if you buff Jett's dashes, you might see a shorter game duration because everyone's moving around faster. And my app was rejected, even though this is just a simple, hey, I want to look at some data. Again, talking to the differences between the two, if we go to the League side, this is the Summoner v4 endpoint, you can just execute your request. It'll just give you the data. Whereas if you go to a Valorant thing, it will not allow you to do anything. This screenshot here underneath is actually a Riot response. Again, just really driving home this point, you have to get approved to even get access to the data. Now, of course, that is very much a catch-22. How can you build an app without any access? So I wanted to address this point going forward. First up, finding documentation. As with everything Riot, there is no official documentation for the Valorant API. Often information is in multiple different places, so it's good to have a couple references you could look at. The ones I recommend are the Riot API themselves, so that's the Valorant docs. Whatever specific to your library, so I use Riot Watcher, it's what I talk about in my course. It's very user-friendly, I would recommend it, but they have their own documentation. And then lastly, there is community documentation and Hextech docs. Here's the Valorant docs I showed before, talking about everything that Riot provides and what their APIs are. This is Riot Watcher, so if you go over to Valorant Watcher, it'll tell you the information it needs when you're doing your codes. And the Hextech docs is just a whole bunch of developer documentation and some tips and tricks that people have used in the past, so it's a good read there. Alright, we have documentation, but how do we get data that we want to work with? Well, occasionally it's posted in the Riot Games developer Discord, so sometimes someone who actually has an API key may feel generous and just donate their data to the community. One of these examples is this raw data from Stellar 7. It looks like this. Let me jump over to the Internet Explorer. It looks like this here. You just click through the directories and it'll show you a bunch of JSONs of game data, so you can just download these directly. The JSONs themselves look like this on the right, so it contains a whole bunch of information about match state, who won in each round, etc. You can dig through this on your own. In terms of what data that is available when you actually have the chance to make a request, again, there's like no documentation out there of where on the internet do I ask for to get a specific content. Well, those are called endpoints, first of all. But second of all, the community has kind of figured this out literally by trial and error. There's a link here that goes over all the list of endpoints. You can see here as an image on the right. These aren't technically official, so don't do anything dumb because it could get you banned from the endpoints. And if you do something really dumb, Riot will ban everyone from the endpoints. So there's a lot of responsibility on you there. And of course, the final reminder here is the endpoints themselves are the same, but you have to specify the server. Well, it doesn't help to talk about endpoints and then not address what they return. Well, Riot's provided some sample responses. I've linked here the one from Riot Tuxedo. It shows what to expect when you pull an account request. So showing what you would typically receive when you make a request to this endpoint. And here on the right, we have some Riot provided FAQs on the Valorant API from the Riot developers Discord. Now that segues very well into what to do when you need help. Well, first up, check past projects. These are just some that I found on GitHub that seemed okay and I've looked at before. This is not an endorsement of those projects. You should probably double check them and make sure it's what you're looking for. But literally just putting Valorant into GitHub pulls up 4,000 some odd repositories, so plenty of information there. If you want specific information, I would go to a Discord server. So there's two that I know of. The first one being the Valorant app developers. It's more tailored to the small community of people that work with Valorant. The second one is a more general Riot Games developer community. This is great. Every single one of my questions that I've had has been answered by someone in this community. I just want to remind you, check the pinned messages first, then use Discord's search functionality, and then ask. There's a lot of information there. You just gotta filter through it. Wrapping this up, hopefully you find this video a little helpful. I know it's a big struggle to get past that catch-22 of how do I make an app if I can't get access to an app. So it's my hope that this information sort of jumpstarts you guys into building whatever your heart desires. Again, if you have any questions or want additional details, just reach out to me. I've been where you guys are. It sucks, and I don't want you to go through it alone. So if you have any questions, feel free to check out my course. Of course, gotta plug that, but just reach out. I'm here to help, guys. That being said, I'm going to end the video here.